I'm going to pull this tweet real quick. We've got this from Colin Rugg. He says, Matt Gaetz says Republicans will release 14,000 hours of January 6 tapes that were hidden by Democrats. Gaetz for the win once again. What could be on these tapes, and do you think it's going to happen?
I think it has a potential of happening, but I'm not super positive just because of everything that was supposed to come out hasn't come out. I actually talked to Gaetz in a Twitter space last night. I asked him about the same thing, and, he was very positive about it. He seemed, basically assured that these were going to be released. I've seen a good majority of this footage that's been unreleased. I wish I could talk about it more, but I can't. But they've deleted footage. They've scrubbed through this. So, even what you're going to see if they do release this 14,000 hours of footage, they're not going to actually release all of it. They've deleted some of it. They've said in public statements that there was no video camera where in the hallway where Ashli Babbitt was shot. There was multiple video cameras. I saw them myself. Multiple congressmen can attest to actually seeing the video cameras. They're there right now outside the speaker's lobby. But they don't want to release the other angles of Ashli Babbitt being shot because it shows Michael Byrd cowardly hiding directly behind the barrier, not issuing a verbal warning, not doing anything, and then stepping forward and essentially executing Ashli Babbitt.
Wow. What happened? She climbed up on a piece of furniture or something to get through a window, and they just thought she was attacking them. And
so what happened is you had multiple officers standing, basically guarding those doors. And me and Ashli were the very first ones to get into that room. And I actually, I offered Officer Yetter, that was his name, a water bottle because he was covered in capsaicin powder. And, they said, no, it's fine. And Ashli Babbitt was literally joking with the same officers that moved out of the way of the barrier, minutes prior to her being shot. And that's the side of the story you never hear. But these cops, the CERT team, which Michael Byrd claims wasn't there, that's the reason why he shot Ashli Babbitt, they were there. They were walking up the stairs. And for those of people that don't know about the CERT team, it's basically the tactical team for the Capitol.
You can see it on video.
Yeah, you can see it on video. And that's where people see the thumbs up is because they didn't realize when Michael Byrd stepped forward and shot, they didn't realize if it was a friendly or not that had fired that shot because it was so unexpected. The CERT team was in the room with Babbitt and everyone else, and you actually, right before she is shot and killed and goes to the window, she grabs Zachary Alam with her right hand and punches him in the face, knocking his glasses off. And Zachary Alam was the one that was responsible for breaking all the barriers out. So she goes through the window, basically in order to try and stop the crowd. She was on camera and on audio basically yelling at these officers to do their job multiple times. And then they didn't do their job. They shifted over. CERT team comes to replace, and now the windows are completely exposed.
So they think, people are saying she was going to get up and turn around and yell at the crowd like, hey, cut it out kind of thing?
You got to think, though, she's 14-year Air Force veteran. She's been on multiple combat deployments. She knows what the rules of engagement are, right? And, is it easier to stop an angry crowd or at least a few angry people within the crowd when you're on the same side of the barrier with her or when you're on the opposite side of the barrier? And, logic says on the opposite side of the barrier, you can push people out the window, you can stand there, you can guard the window, or you can at least grab that window pane that's exposed and pull it back in.
Have they filed a wrongful death suit?
I'm not sure if it's been officially filed, but I do know something is in the process.
And it's also important to note that that officer was acting extremely reckless to shoot an unarmed woman in the neck or in the face.
It was in the left anterior shoulder.
With police officers behind her,
Yep.
and her not
Directly
being
in line
a
of
threat
fire.
or not being armed is absolutely something that should have been national headline news. There should have been some larger accountability here, but this officer was investigated and not even held accountable for his crimes. Meanwhile, this was the same officer that left a firearm in a public bathroom before.
Yeah, in 2018, he left his loaded Glock in a public bathroom, and a civilian found it in the Capitol. And then, his quote is actually hilarious. He was a lieutenant at the time. He said, "I will not be punished." He says, "I will be treated differently because of my rank as lieutenant." So, if he actually was deranked or actually punished with how he was supposed to be in a proper law enforcement scenario, he wouldn't have been there to shoot Ashli Babbitt. It would have been somebody that was leading the house security other than Michael Byrd.
I'm just thinking about you were there, right? And you're a reporter. You're covering what's going on. How close were you? Were you in danger?
Yeah, absolutely. Not from the direct round. I was closest to Michael Byrd out of anybody. That's where you get the hoax of where, he's on video giving her a verbal warning, but he didn't give her a single verbal warning before he stepped forward and shot her. Most people didn't even realize that he was there. It was so loud in that room because you had a crowd surge coming in from behind and just overfilling. And you had John Sullivan, which we all know about John Sullivan. He was right next to me. He has the angle of him actually shooting Ashli, and my angle is of Ashli falling out the window. And, he's screaming, hey, he's got a gun because he's the only one that can see Michael Byrd. And so I remember I started screaming it, but you literally can't hear from me to you. And the distance between me and Ashli was about, from me and Serge, 10, 15 feet. And that's when, she went up. Nobody even realized that there was a gun there, and he stepped forward and executed her.
Wow.
Absolutely, just crazy, insane.
Yeah, and I never, in all my years reporting, I mean, I covered the 2020 riots. I've seen some pretty crazy things. The feet on fire, Molotov clips, all of those kinds of things.
We were there.
In Portland, Night 100.
There was also that one in during the DNC in Philadelphia.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think Mike Cernovich was down there too. Yeah, and we saw someone.
Fire.
Yeah, I've seen some really crazy things on the ground, but I've never seen. Nothing will ever compare to what I experienced on January 6th, and of course, it still lives with me. Seeing an innocent woman basically get murdered by the government in front of me, and then I remember that night really just. I was in shock. I remember stumbling out of the Capitol, not really understanding what took place. I went to the hotel. They basically did a little mini martial law. You couldn't even leave your hotel afterwards. Wow. And, I was lucky enough to stay with some of the InfoWars guys. They brought me in because my hotel was on the opposite side of the entire town, and you couldn't even walk outside. And I remember watching the TV, and, I had licensed my footage, but I didn't feel right about making an actual profit off it. I gave it to these news sources for like $2 a clip. And then you got John Sullivan selling it for $85,000, which is absolutely absurd. So, yeah, he got criminally charged, but then now he's perfectly fine living in Utah. They dropped the charges or what? I'm pretty sure they dropped the charges. I'm not 100% sure, but it's suspicious around him. The FBI reached out to me after the shooting, and the only thing they wanted to talk about, they didn't want to talk about literally anything else other than John Sullivan. So that kind of puts it into perspective. They wanted to talk about their little patsy toy. But the night of, I just watched on the news, they're using my footage and spinning a completely different story on what happened. They didn't talk about how Ashli was trying to de-escalate. Instead, she was called a violent terrorist and insurrectionist. So that's kind of when it set in for me of like, I'm in the middle of a cover-up.
As Ray Epps is on camera on January 5th saying, we're going to storm the Capitol, and on January 5th, and then people calling him a Fed. People were screaming, Fed. And then he did the same thing the next day.
Yep, he did the same thing multiple times and is on camera multiple times on the 6th, organizing people at different points saying we're going into the Capitol.
And this is a man that still has not been punished or even brought in for questioning. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, he was brought in for questioning by the January 6th committee, which is convenient because the committee, I literally begged them to tell my story. I wanted to tell my story to them. Reached out on multiple accounts. None of them wanted to talk to me. They refused, which... Now we know why. I saw something I wasn't supposed to see on multiple occasions. But then you got Ray Epps, and he is basically being paraded around as the darling of the day by Adam Kinzinger and Liz Cheney, saying, oh no, he did nothing wrong, even though he is on video arguably doing more than almost everybody that's actually been prosecuted and is sitting in a cell right now.
That's crazy. The Ray Epps thing is the most agreed. Like, it's the one where I hear about it. I'm like, oh, I hear this guy Ray Epps. And then you see the video of him, and you hear his voice saying, let's go do this now. Like, he's telling people... How is that guy not in some sort of detention at the moment?
Yeah, it's incitement.
Like that's the...
He orchestrated it.
Yep. It's on text.
Ray Epps
he literally helped orchestrate it.
Ray Epps did a whole lot more to get people riled up than Donald Trump did.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Well, and Donald Trump's like, we're going to be peaceful. We're the party of law and order. Don't forget. Yep. Ray Epps is like, go do it.
Yep, and I built a timeline directly after the 6th, and literally the first breach that happened at the Capitol, it was 19 minutes. Trump had 19 minutes left in his speech, so you can't really say that Trump was the one that incited it. It was Ray Epps that literally formed that initial group that I followed to the Capitol.
All of the people that say that Trump incited, etc., that is all garbage. Like, you can say that Trump didn't do enough to quell it and calm them down. And at least I'll say, I think that I might disagree, but at least that resembles the reality that I experienced. When people say he intended to do it, he was getting people riled up the day before, and et cetera, et cetera. He did not go there and tell people to attack the Capitol. He was not telling people that they needed to go in, blah, 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 blah. He was definitely... he wanted to be president still, and he was looking for any excuse to stay in office.
Can you blame him though?
No, yeah. I get it. I get it. There was a lot of things that he had to be irritated and dissatisfied with about the election and leading up to it. I absolutely believe that, but he didn't. It wasn't an insurrection at all.
Well, that's why charged with insurrection.
That's why exactly. That's why people
are not getting charged. How are you going to overthrow a government with no firearms?
There is no there, and there was There was never going to be a situation where Donald Trump actually walked away in charge. Like that wasn't in the cards.
And how does it make sense? Is you're disrupting this proceeding, even if you somehow take over the Capitol? It's not how the U.S. government works, right? Like you can take over a government building, you can squat there. Nothing is going to come from that. There's still, there's checks and balances, everything that is in place to make it not possible.
Yeah, it used to be. Used to be that if you took a building, that's where the paperwork was, and they didn't know who was signed up for what. Then you ran the show, but now it's all digital.
Well, I've said this since day one. Is I've reported on a lot of violence and a lot of things in my career, but you don't walk into one of the most secure buildings in the world unarmed unless you're allowed to, and they're on video. It's literally on video. Cops saying, "Hey, I don't agree with you, but come on in."
Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.